welcome in you Gooshbagz to week 8 of the Gooshbagz Fantasy Football League. It's bound to be a good one as I have the league's scoring leader and my week 8 opponent with me, Andrew Kortze, right here on the mic. How you going? How you doing, Kortze?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm excited to be on the show. I think it's a lot of fun having you do these, and it's gonna be a good time to talk some fantasy football and our trade.
yeah.
It's a good time to be doing
Oh
this as
yeah.
well since we just had
Oh
a
yeah.
trade. We had
Exactly.
our matchup this past weekend, so I mean this is as
Oh
good a
yeah.
time as any to do this.
Yeah. Well, nice little lead in here. The news in the Gooshbagz League. We had 2 trades last week, not just one,
That's right.
but we had 2. One snuck in right before the week started, and I was very mad about that on Sunday morning. But that's okay. We'll get to it. The first one is the trade between me, myself, and Ryo. Carry on my wayward son. I traded John Brown and Ty Johnson for Cooper Kupp. Now this was a largely debated trade.
There's chaos in the
There
streets.
was chaos in the streets, and there was much agony in the chat, but we made it through. A lot of people didn't think that I gave enough for Cooper Kupp, but it was a running back needy team since they just lost Kerryon Johnson, and I don't know. I mean, yes, true. They both did not have very good weeks this week, John Brown and Ty Johnson, but I thought John Brown has a cake schedule coming up. I don't know if you know this, but the Bills for the next 5 weeks have the easiest schedule besides maybe the Jets. They both have easy schedules. So I thought John Brown, I was hesitant to give up John Brown, but I mean, it's definitely worth getting Cooper Kupp in return. But yeah.
Oh, and like you said, I think you mentioned this to Ryo as well. But I mean, like you said, there was the need, and you were kind of using that, just throwing that out there, Kerryon's backup as a starting point to kind of haggle in the trade.
Right.
And you were surprised when he accepted that one straight away.
I was, yeah. I have record of me just saying, well, first you said, I don't know, I'm pretty hesitant to give up Cooper Kupp. And I was like, okay, I understand. He's a good wide receiver. Do you want more? I literally said, do you want more? And he said something back to me, and I didn't answer right away. And then 5 minutes later, he was like, you know what? Nah, I'll send it through. I was like,
screw it.
Okay, that's fine. I'll take it.
And I was shocked because this is all in, you guys got this rivalry going back a few years at least.
Oh yeah.
It's when the Jason Ryo matchups come up, it's always, big news. So
yeah.
I was surprised that, that it was that quick that you pulled the trigger. And
I was too. We're always rooting against each other each week.
And you can't really, judge a trade after 1 week, though. I feel like we'll probably talk about, how ours panned out, just because, it's hard to ignore your first reactions, one game after you make the trade. It's like, oh crap,
right.
I just screwed my season.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt, this week once James Conner went off on me this week. So, I knew though. Well, especially with Miami on the schedule, I knew that he was going to have a good week this week. But I think in general, having the solidity at tight end position is much more worth it to me since I already have Chris Carson and Dalvin Cook on my team. I wasn't super concerned about running back depth, but
we've kind of talked about it a bit, you and I, in the past, just the comfort of knowing that you have a top tier tight end and you don't need to worry about the position. You just stick him there regardless of the matchup, and then you just don't worry about it instead of checking the waiver wire every week.
Yeah. Playing tight end roulette is no fun at all. And I don't know if you actually listened to my very first episode. You said you did maybe, but right at the very end, I tacked on that little bit about my draft strategy and whatnot. And I talked about how I grabbed OJ Howard because I thought he was going to be, everybody was predicting he was going to be a very solid. This was his breakout year. So he was going to have a very solid year with the new offense in Tampa Bay and everything. Everything was lined up for him to be used heavily and to get massive yardage. So I was like, I'm going to be set at tight end. That's why I grabbed him in the 5th round. I was like, he's going to be solid for me. And then it didn't pan out. So I ended up playing tight end roulette until I found Will Disley. And then he got,
that's right.
So
and And he tore his ACL, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was ACL.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember for sure, but yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Benaya with the breakout season talk. I know it's kind of a meme going back to the Joe Mixon
Oh
rookie
yeah.
year.
Right.
But I mean, you called the Chris Godwin breakout year,
Yeah.
though. I
Well.
mean,
Yeah.
goodness gracious.
That wasn't just me though. That was also a lot of the league people. You know, all the fantasy analysts were talking about how Chris Godwin's just gonna go ham this year, and I didn't end up grabbing him. I should have. He went like the 7th or 8th round or something like that.
Okay. I think
Maybe it was earlier. It might have been earlier, but either way, like it should have been an easy pickup. But you know,
what could you do?
Those breakout guys, you don't have any past experience with them, so you don't really know if for sure if they're going to be reliable or not. It's just kind of a calling your shot sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think D.D. Westbrook, he was a name that was getting thrown around quite a bit, and he hasn't really panned out. Actually, is it DJ Chark who's kind of become the breakout for the Jaguars?
Yeah, well, I think the reason that, well, I guess we thought that there was no other wide receiver talent in Jacksonville, and then there happened to be DJ Chark, but I think part of the reason that D.D. Westbrook was going to be the big breakout was because because Nick Foles, that's how he throws the ball. He throws the ball like 10-yard spurts. So, because he was targeting Dede over 10 times each game in the preseason, and then the first 1 or 2 games, and then Nick Foles got hurt, and Gardner Minshew's play style is a little bit different than Nick Foles. So Gardner Minshew's been throwing down the field, taking shots to DJ Chark. So
what a gift to NFL memes.
Oh, it is. Gardner Minshew is the man. Yeah, I'm gonna be so I am a little scruffy today, and so are you, I see.
Yes.
I'm gonna be shaving on October 31st. Oh wait, tomorrow's your birthday, right?
Yeah, it
Holy
is.
cats.
I'm impressed.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you.
I just remembered because I was talking about the end of October.
Yep.
Dang. I'll have to shoot you a text or something. Yeah, but
no shave November though.
Yes. So I'm shaving on the 31st and then maybe once December rolls around, I'll shave everything but the mustache. Do my best Gardner Minshew impression. Yeah.
Now, are you going all out no shave, or are you gonna shave the neck beard and just have like around the chin and the cheek?
That's a good question. In the past, I've done both. So I've done the full no shave, and I've also done the trimming. It kind of depends. Each year I'm like, I'm going to do full no shave. And then 3 weeks in, you're like, oh my God, this itches so much and it looks so bad. So I end up shaving just under the chin and, up here. So it's not scruffy on the cheeks. Yeah, exactly.
I think that could be fair.
Yeah. So I'm still growing the beard. That's what matters. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're gonna move on to the other trade that happened right before the game started this last Sunday. It was between you and Mix and Mac, Neil Medorata's team. So it consisted of Neil trading Latavius Murray, you trading Latavius Murray, Robert Woods, and Philip Lindsay, all for Julian Edelman. So, man, you just had to counter that Cooper Kupp trade. You were scared. Actually, you probably wanted Robert Woods off your team. That was probably what it was.
Well, I don't know, because
don't worry, I did too.
That's what you traded him to me originally. No, honestly, I would have preferred to get rid of Cooks.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
I've watched a lot of Rams games this year,
but yeah, exactly. Like, once you get one concussion, that's not ideal, and then 2, it is not looking great, obviously.
Right.
But I don't know, and it's not even like statistically maybe a problem, but just the idea of having like 2 wide receivers on the same team just
like no fun. That's why I wasn't sure that our trade was going to work out, because I didn't know what other wide receiver to trade you, because my other wide receivers didn't have the name power of Robert Woods. Like, they weren't quite to the tier of Robert Woods, so I didn't know if you would have accepted like Terry McLaurin. Well, we talked about Terry McLaurin, and he has a tough schedule coming up. or like Michael Gallup. He's not really proven very well. He had a couple good games, but then he got hurt, so who knows? But yeah, so nobody else really had the name power, and I didn't know if you would take Robert Woods or not, so I was concerned. But
Yeah, I was looking at Gallup. Just I think for that particular week, I think Cooper was out, and
yeah,
I know that I had McCaffrey on a bye, and um, was it who else was on a bye? That it was Mike Evans was on a bye. Yeah, and
yeah, that
so
was it.
I was going into that week pretty meager against Adam,
Yeah,
and he had all of his studs coming back. So I was looking for like just maybe even like a 1 week boost in that regard.
right.
But then there's always the conversation of, okay, so Gallup's, you're the number 2 on the Cowboys. And
Yeah,
then, so Cooper's, obviously the one. And
yeah,
so people say, oh, Cooper's out, so all the targets are going to be going to Gallup. But then, of course, the number 1 cornerback for whoever's playing is also going to be covering
it's also
Gallup.
got.
So
Yep,
it's
that's
like
true.
the age-old conversation: is it actually beneficial, to have the number 1 receiver go out?
Yeah, that's like the Juju or the Tyler Boyd conversations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I'm sure are benefiting a lot from having each other.
yeah, I
And
think so.
unfortunately for you, they didn't help OJ Howard too
That's
much.
all
I
right.
think having Godwin break out, but
I eventually figured out my tight end position,
it's
so
true. Yeah.
we got there. But yeah, I think in the end, both trades bolstered our wide receivers, which is what we needed them to do. We both traded multiple people for one good wide receiver, so we gave up some of our depth. But I think at this point in the year, I'm not as concerned about depth as I am about getting that good starting core, especially since we're getting a lot of the guys past their bye weeks, so you don't have to worry about unless they get hurt. You don't have to worry about substituting them. But
Yeah. That's a good point. There's so many things to take into account that I think we were talking about it too. Sometimes it's easiest just to like on first instinct accept it or reject it like a trade,
right,
because you can look at upcoming schedule, you can look at bye weeks. I mean, there's countless things that you could just go back and forth between. But like at the end of the day, in my trade, like maybe if you were just talking statistics, I might have over traded a little bit for Edelman, but the
yeah,
value that just having Edelman would provide me in my situation versus having the Kamara handcuff,
right,
Robert Woods, and then probably my running back 3 or 4. Like it was
yeah.
worth it to
And
shed all that.
to be honest, if you look at it like this week specifically, it probably didn't work out in your favor because Latavius Murray went off for like 35 points or whatever. But in general, Latavius Murray is not going to be playing that much once Kamara comes back, or at least as much as he was. So he won't be as valuable unless Kamara gets hurt again. And then Robert Woods really hasn't been doing much. And then Philip Lindsay is kind of a boomer bust sort of play every week. So
Yeah, I liked having both Lindsey and Royce Freeman on my bench just in case one of them got hurt, because then
yeah,
the other one
yeah.
would take over
It's
the
basically
duties.
a guaranteed running back one if one of them
Right.
gets hurt. So
Yeah.
now you have neither of them on your team, and I
Yeah,
have
I know.
Royce
I
Freeman.
dropped
So
Freeman. I saw you picked him up, so
yeah,
I think that's a good bench guy to have. Just
yeah,
he's getting some of those goal
yeah.
line touches
I
as
have
well.
I have both him and Jamal Williams. I kind of had some trouble at my third running back position, but hopefully I don't need him. Most of the time I play a wide receiver in the flex, so it's not a
Yeah,
huge deal.
I don't know how much you've talked to other guys about the changing to half point PPR this year, but I think it's added a cool element of having just a little more value for wide receivers.
Oh, I think so too. I think it's a good compromise because I think a full PPR would too many people would be relevant, and then you just kind of sit there not really knowing uh, who you can play each week because I mean it's a good problem to have, but you have too many wide receivers essentially, and so it makes people like Jarvis Landry, like that was the main argument from Benaya, I think, was it makes like Jarvis Landry relevant, and a person like Jarvis Landry should not be relevant in fantasy football. Essentially, he gets like 10 catches for 50 yards. That shouldn't be a big game. So
Yeah,
that kind of gives him like for that sort of game, a 10 catches for 50 yards. That gives him a 10-point game, which isn't really super. That's not something you are looking for in your fantasy production. So, um, whereas a 15-point game is a little bit better. It's usually above the um, above the projection. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And I don't, and this is a little bit off topic, but you mentioned Jarvis Landry. It's weird to have the Browns be in relevant discussions this year.
Oh yeah.
Whereas I mean, people would flock to whatever DST would be facing the Browns in upcoming weeks, and
Yep.
if you owned a Browns player, I don't know, maybe even I don't know, I guess Chubb has been like the most recent relevant
Oh yeah.
Browns fantasy player, but I mean, isn't there something that's just kind of just a sublimeness, shout out to Christopher Shack, a sublimeness to the Browns coming into the season with all this hype and
Oh
they're
yeah.
gonna win the division and everything. And what are they? Are they 2-5? Is that
Yeah,
where they're sitting
something
right
like
now?
that. Yeah, they're not doing so hot. Yeah, well
And
there was
Odell is underperforming in fantasy,
yeah,
and I mean,
there was so much hype, especially around Odell and Baker Mayfield. Like, man, it was huge. Everybody was saying how great Odell is gonna be because he's got a better quarterback and like, man, it was insane. But
Baker's got all those TV commercials, and
yeah,
he's mowing the football field with
to be
his
honest though,
push
those are
mower. Yeah.
hilarious.
Those are, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Those are great. The
but
hype wasn't quite as much coming to the season as was the Bears hype, as you mentioned in
yeah,
one of your
yeah.
last podcasts. That has been a disaster. And this week, after
Oh
Panero
man,
missed
kicking
the field
woes.
goal, at least it wasn't a doink. It was not a doink. But when he
One
missed that, I
his
thought to
early
myself,
field goal was a doink.
it's true. Yeah, from what, 30 yards, I think it
It's
was.
something like
The
that.
chip shot, and he dunked it. It's like, oh gosh. But after he missed the one to lose the game at the end, I thought to myself, well, now the season's over. It's a good thing we have fantasy because that's. I mean, you're
Yeah,
sitting 3-4, and you got the Vikings in the pack, and then
yeah,
even the Lions are probably going to finish ahead of the Bears at this rate.
yeah,
So
yeah.
thank goodness for fantasy.
I
So
tell you what, the guys at my work, everybody's a Bears fan at my work, and they were coming in like all strutting at before the season started, like, oh, they're gonna be so good. The Bears D is so good, and like their offense, Mitch is gonna take a step forward in year two and like or year three or whatever, and he's just he's gonna do great.
yep.
Didn't
Mark,
work. Didn't
getting
work out.
Mark Trestman vibes right now in
I know.
Chicago. Like honestly, it's like the first season, like hope, coming back to the franchise, and then the second year just absolute, disaster. So,
Oh yeah.
um, but
But
yeah, not great,
no.
not great.
All right, let's get back on track here. So we got a few injuries in the NFL. We talked about Brandon Cooks with another concussion. He might be out for a couple of weeks at least while he's in the concussion protocol. Bad news for J.J. Watt. He's got a torn pectoral muscle and he is out for the rest of the year.
Seems
So
like it's death taxes and
yeah,
JJ Watt getting
I know.
hurt. It's,
Sam Darnold is back in the injury report. He has a sprained thumb. I don't know if it's a throwing thumb or not, but I don't know if that'll affect his. I mentioned their cake schedule going forward, so
yeah, I saw you picked him up off waivers.
I did.
Last week, a couple weeks ago, and
Uh-huh.
I looked at their schedule and I was like, yeah, I can see why.
Yeah, I grabbed him and I ended up dropping him for Josh Allen because Sam Darnold put up negative 6.7 points. So I didn't really, even with the cake schedule, I didn't really feel comfortable with him on my team.
Yeah, like if you could have held out like for a week and they'd be playing Miami this upcoming weekend. But
Yeah.
even then, there's
Yeah,
decent options.
I was trying to beat the waiver wire. I thought somebody might pick him up this week.
Like
Going
me.
into exactly. You're probably doing it right now, aren't you? Putting in a bid for Sam Darnold.
Nah, and that's something I wanted to kind of ask about because you probably saw that I think I put up $6 for Kirk Cousins, and
Yeah.
the whole week Josh Allen had been pretty much projected as a top 5 quarterback. And
Yeah.
maybe it's just like personally, I have this mental block of picking up Bills offensive players that I just couldn't do it to myself.
It's tough.
But I mean, as soon as he didn't throw any touchdowns against the Skins, I thought that like that was going to be the beginning of the end for our matchup this week.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I thought about, so you listened to last week's episode where I was talking to Benaiah, right? And about how he stole the tight ends from me
yeah,
off the waiver wire.
Everett and all that.
I
Yeah,
was gonna do the same thing to you, because I saw that your quarterback was on a bye this
yeah.
week, and I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm gonna grab like 3 quarterbacks or 4." I was literally on my phone, and I was like, gonna put in a bid for Kirk Cousins, and I was gonna
Yeah.
put in a bid for who else was on, like Matt Stafford, I think was on the waiver
Yeah.
wire, or
Who else
maybe
was Daniel Jones was there.
yeah,
David
Daniel
Carr. He was
Jones.
one that I
Yeah,
counted that.
yeah.
Um, I think Rivers and yeah, Cousins and Allen. Cousins and Allen are really the top two. I mean, I I really bought into buying high on Cousins because he had I think 3 straight weeks of 20, 30 plus points, something like that.
Oh yeah.
So that was definitely a should have been a red flag there. Is a buy high situation.
Well, I don't think it was even that. I think it was the fact that their matchup was too good. So they had Washington, right? And I just knew that Dalvin Cook was just gonna run all over him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I was I was partially scared and partially like excited because like I knew that Kirk Cousins could unexpectedly put up like a 30-point game on me, but also like it could be a complete Dalvin Cook game. So it turned out that way, but it didn't end up getting me the win. So
Yeah, like if he could have got me one touchdown, I think that would have put him at like 15 points. And I probably would
yeah,
have.
it would have been okay. An
At the
okay
time though,
streamer.
I was definitely sweating at the time.
Oh
So
yeah.
for
Yeah,
most of the matchup, I was sweating. So
I was very excited coming out of Thursday night because, Dalvin Cook did really well. Terry McLaurin didn't do so hot, but I had like 30 something points after Thursday from 2 players, so I was stoked. But
can't really ask for much more
yeah.
than that.
Well, speaking of scoring big points, you were the top scorer in the league this week. You had 155.4 points. What's that, like 4 weeks now?
Okay.
You've
So
almost
interesting you
got your
bring it
money
up.
back already.
I didn't honestly didn't know going into the start of the year that the highest score was getting $10. I checked Venmo randomly one day. I don't know
Yeah,
why, but
yeah.
I saw that you'd sent me $10. I was like, oh, do we get $10 per win? And then I was like, I was doing the math. I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. There's no way we
Right.
have that much money in the pool.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea. And then listened to the podcast, and I was like,
Yep. Just for the
that's
the
my
highest score.
score.
So I still have to get you your money for this week. I haven't done it yet, but I
It's all
will.
right.
It will
It's all
come to
right.
you.
In celebration of
Oh jeez.
my highest score, I'm gonna
Oh,
put
your
on this
5K.
my 5K medal. This one, I I didn't actually end up running.
Oh,
I
but you
went
got a
to
medal.
see
For,
I went to see a friend finish because the race started at like 7 a.m. So
yes.
no way I was getting out of bed for that on a Saturday morning.
Oh
And
yeah.
so the finish line is just on the street. So
Oh, there you
went
go.
down there. It's like 8:30 something like that. And as I'm walking up to like the area where they got all the tents and like the tables of food and drink
Yeah.
and stuff, there was these people that were working for whoever sponsored the race.
Yeah.
They had like boxes and boxes of medals, and they were handing them out to the finishers. And so I walked up, and they were like,
I know where this is
"Congratulations!"
going. Yep.
Hand me the medal.
Oh
There we go.
jeez. So
So,
you're not
dash down
only
5K.
not only are you not wearing a football related medal, it's a 5K medal that you did not run the 5K in. That says 2018 finisher on the strap. On the
Oh, it
strap.
does. Oh
Right
yeah.
there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
20
You're not a
finisher.
finisher.
That's what participation trophies are everything. Even though
You're
I did
right.
not participate. I was trying to
All
find my
right.
bubble run 5K medal. I could not. So.
Well, moving on to high finishers, let's do the studs of the week here. We'll power through them since we've been off on. That's okay. That's totally okay. That's why I have you on. So I love this like camaraderie feel to this episode because talking to myself has been boring. So it's been good to have you and Benaiah on the last couple weeks. So at the quarterback position, guess who it was? Daniel Jones, 28.2. You should have grabbed him. You had the
2.0.
opportunity.
Yep.
What were you thinking? I don't know.
Who's playing? It was Detroit.
Detroit. It was a shootout in
Okay.
Detroit. Yeah, he had 28. 25.2 fantasy points. He threw for 322 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a fumble. So yeah, he showed up for that big game in Detroit. They ended up losing, but both teams put up some huge fantasy points. Deshaun Watson.
Indoors. It's
Oh yeah,
get players that are playing indoors.
yeah,
especially
those
this time.
indoors games. Yeah, especially it was windy in a few games this week, and I think that was in the Bills game. I
Yeah.
think that was part of why maybe John Brown didn't have the great week this week, but
Shout out to Ryle.
exactly. Yeah. So Deshaun Watson had 27.8 fantasy points. He was quarterback 2. He had 279 passing yards with 3 touchdowns, and he also had 10 rushes for 46 yards. It's a classic Deshaun Watson. He's running everywhere, all over the field, all the time, mainly because his offensive line doesn't keep him safe.
If he could make it through a career in Houston,
that's a surprise. That would be a surprise, yeah. But yeah, did you see this play at the end of the game?
I didn't see it live. I unfortunately had to go see a replay. They were showing it here in Dallas though, because they usually have most of the Texans games on if the Cowboys aren't playing.
Man, that game, the end of that game was insane. It was he literally they were on like the 5-yard line or 10-yard line or something, and the lineman came up, grabbed him, spun him around, and as the lineman was falling to the ground, his foot came up and kicked Deshaun Watson in the perfect spot in his face mask, where it went through the eye hole and cut his eye right above his eye. And you could see him in the replay. You could see him like put his hand up over his eye like before he threw the ball, and then he was like falling over. Man, it was insane. It was an insane throw.
But you know what else? The Bears traded up to the number 2 spot to draft Mitch Trubisky.
To not draft Deshaun Watson. You're right. Yeah.
So just another reminder.
And Pat Mahomes, just so you know.
I won't discredit the Bears for not drafting him, since he was pretty low on a lot of teams. But
you're right.
Man, you got Deshaun Watson who beat Alabama in the title game and had 4 years of experience in Clemson, and then you got Mitch Trubisky with 13 games started.
Yeah,
North Carolina.
One season at North Carolina.
Might be known for the basketball, but remember the last time they're relevant in football.
Right.
But anyway, that's the Bears for you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of amazing touchdown passes, how about Aaron Rodgers this week? I don't know if you saw that touchdown pass. Were you able to watch that?
I tried to not watch as many of Aaron Rodgers' touchdown passes.
This touchdown pass was just as good as it was almost a clone of Deshaun Watson's touchdown pass. It was like he was chased out of the pocket. One guy was like tackling him from the side, and he was falling over, and he threw the ball over Jimmy Graham's head into the back corner of the end zone where Jamal Williams was. And you should have heard him in his post-game interview. Somebody asked him, he was like, were you just throwing that ball away, or did you like see Jamal Williams back there? He's like, yeah, I saw a guy running behind, Jimmy Graham. He didn't even know who he was, I don't think, but he just saw a dude, and so he was like, I'm gonna throw it high enough so that only Jimmy Graham could get it if he wanted to, or maybe that guy in the back of the end zone that was streaking behind him could get it if Jimmy Graham doesn't get it. So that was what he did, and it was an amazing catch.
Do you think this is the best that you've seen Aaron Rodgers? I mean, definitely in the last few years, but I mean
yeah.
He's got a running game.
I don't know.
He's decent defense, but I mean,
he
looks about as good as I've seen him.
Well, for sure, the last couple weeks, he's looked like old school Aaron Rodgers. But the beginning of the year, he wasn't putting up the massive. He had like 200, just over 200 passing yards, and like maybe a couple touchdowns, maybe not. He wasn't really fantasy relevant at all. And I talked about this previously. I said that the Packers defense was just so good. At least at the beginning of the year, they were shutting down everybody, so he didn't even need to throw like he used to.
Yeah.
And I think prime Aaron Rodgers was like 2010, because he led their offense to the Super Bowl that year.
Steelers.
And they had a bad defense then, so he didn't. He needed to put up those kind of numbers, and he was running and throwing all over the field, but. Yeah, this year he hasn't had to do that as much, but the last couple games he's been putting together some very solid games. Speaking of Packers going off, let's go on to the running backs category. Aaron Jones was the running back 1 for this week. He had 38.1 fantasy points, 16 rushes, only 67 yards on the ground, but he had 7 catches for 159 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. He's basically putting up wide receiver 1 numbers, but also running for 70 yards. So
that extra 7 points on top of the 2 scores and the 150 yards.
Exactly. Yeah, because that wasn't enough.
That'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Who's got him? Is it Chad that has Aaron Jones?
Chad. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I know. I know. I'm jealous. Tevin Coleman also had a big week for the 49ers this week. You happen to have him on your team, right?
Had him on the team.
You didn't play him.
So I was going to mention this if we talked about the Chase Edmonds injury, because that was when it really
yeah,
got
sorry,
bad.
we skipped that, or we kind of glossed over it a little.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay. I wasn't sure which one would come up first, Coleman's game or Edmonds' lack of a good game plus the injury.
Yeah.
But so I had Coleman in my lineup, I think, all week. I got Edmonds off waivers for, I can't remember if it was like $6 or something.
Yeah.
So like, just having the David Johnson handcuffs, like, okay,
you outbid me.
You put in one for him too. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't put in. I only put in like $3 or something. I've been conservative more recently.
Okay.
But
yeah, interesting to kind of pick your brain on the whole $100 pot that we get. For waivers this year. It'll be interesting to talk about that. But so in this case, though, I put in $6, got Chase Edmonds. Like, all right, cool. And then the news came out that David Johnson wasn't starting.
Yeah.
And which was nice of the Cardinals to actually inform.
Oh,
us
for sure.
At
Yeah.
the time. That was really kind of them. So I was like, all right, sweet. And like projections had them going like in about the same area. And like my thinking came down to he's the only back. Yeah, the Saints aren't a great matchup.
Right.
But like volume, blah blah blah. And then Tevin Coleman's still splitting with Matt Breida a little bit. So
right.
Anyway, but I still had Coleman in the lineup throughout all Sunday morning, and I kid you not, after church, 11:59 a.m., I grab my phone. I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling
Can't
it.
do this.
I want to watch him play at noon just to have another guy, and so I took Coleman out, put Edmonds in. Edmond gets 2.3 points in an injury, and Coleman goes for 38.
Yeah.
So
I know Neil hates this, but I started Chase Edmonds in another league because I have David Johnson and I also have Chase Edmonds, and I started him too because he's got to have volume. He's the only running back, like you said. So I thought for sure he was going to be a solid start, and he just I mean, sucks. He got hurt. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it.
The Saints. But... I mean, that the defense is picked right off from last year. So
they have
the kind of fade players going into New Orleans. I think that's recent. So
speaking of backup running backs, Latavius Murray was the running back 3 on the week. He had 32.2 fantasy points, 21 rushes for 102. I put points in here, but it was 102 yards.
Dang. That's New England
that's a lot
defense.
Of points. Yeah. That's true. Oh, man. He had 1 rushing touchdown, 9 catches for 55 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. So the last 2 weeks he's been doing good in Kamara's absence, and he might have actually earned himself a slightly bigger role once Kamara comes back. Maybe he'll kind of take over the Mark Ingram role that seemed to be vacated and not used this year. So
I mean, I was pretty shocked at his output as well, because just with volume, I figured he'd have a decent outing, and that was kind of the pitch, I made to Neil. And it worked out for him, because even if Kamara is healthy going forward, it got him the W this week against Rayo.
Yeah, and he has Kamara, doesn't he? Yeah. So that's good for him.
Right. But I think, was that his first receiving touchdown, Murray, this week?
Ever?
I think it was his career first receiving touchdown.
Maybe. I don't know that stat.
Off a little bit, but I think I saw that on the
Well, he probably wasn't used in the passing downs much in Minnesota, so.
True.
But yeah, so that was a great game for him. Good for him. Maybe he's earned himself some more workload when he comes back. But Well, back to your team, I guess. We'll go to the wide receiver position. Mike Evans was the wide receiver one this week. He had 37.3 fantasy points, 11 catches for almost 200 yards, 198 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Couldn't get those 2 extra yards. Um,
Unbelievable.
yeah, but what I
What can I
put
say?
in here, what I put in here was that like it's interesting. He's had kind of an up and down year. And I know I didn't really have too much faith in Mike Evans, because he's always kind of been that boom bust guy. But if you take out the first 2 weeks where he was allegedly sick, they kept saying
Right.
he was sick. And then his only other bad week was when he goosed and Chris Godwin, I think, went for like freaking 50 points or something. He just wasn't needed in that game. Other than that,
Basically,
he's sorry. Yeah.
I was basically the flip of this week. I think Godwin had only a few points,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
Evans had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, other than that, he's been putting up great numbers the rest of the year. So, um,
and
yep.
I lucked out a little bit there because I wasn't aware of like the whole Chris Godwin like likely breakout season. And so I was like,
Yeah,
oh, all right, volume and Bruce Arians offense with
yeah.
Jameis Winston. It's like
Well,
whatever.
I mean
But
that's the plus of that Bruce Arians offense is that you can definitely have more than one relevant wide receiver with how much they pass the ball. So, and especially with Jameis Winston, all he does is just chuck the ball. So, yeah,
he just wants to eat another W every week.
exactly.
That's all he wants to. It's
And then,
weird seeing two Bucks wide receivers in like the top 5 rankings, though. I think I
oh
saw
yeah,
saw
yeah.
Godwin and Evans both in like the top 5, and it's like I don't know.
Yeah,
That
even in the top
just
10 would be crazy, but they're both in top 5, which is insane.
yeah,
But
I agreed.
well, on to another top 5 wide receiver. Cooper Kupp
Nice.
had 31.5 fantasy points. My big move to get him before this week. Definitely nailed that. But I had 7. He had not I. Cooper Kupp had 7 catches for 220 yards and 1 touchdown. So he's really the only one that Jared Goff has been thrown to this year. So
Yeah.
that felt good to get him on my team. I definitely, after trading for Keenan Allen and having my Devontae Adams woes, I finally got a wide receiver that I think I can maybe rely on from week to week.
It's so bizarre that uh, last year not only was the distribution more balanced between Cooks, Woods, and Cup,
Yeah,
but Cup was the third option, I believe. Like
yeah,
at least at very most the second option, but I mean it was really
it was, yeah. Robert Woods
Cooks
was,
ahead.
yeah, Woods was more consistent. He always got the high volume, but not necessarily the big yards or touchdowns. I think Cup, he usually got the least amount of targets, but he always got those red zone targets. So he was getting those touchdowns, which made him a lot more fantasy relevant. And I think in the this is just off the top of my head, so I'm not sure, but uh, in the times where he was active and playing last year, because he got hurt with his Achilles, I think Achilles or hand, no, it was an ACL, I think
Yeah, I think so.
ACL.
But yeah,
But yeah, with that, when he wasn't hurt, I think he was like the wide receiver 7. He just
okay.
had a bunch of touchdowns. So yeah,
I
he's
think
been good.
I can't remember who had him. I'm looking at the the transaction history for the Rams receivers,
Yeah,
um, and like Cup was drafted 41, and I'm pulling up Cooks because I drafted Cooks in like I think the third round, 39th. So
yeah. That's the
drafted
fourth round. Fourth
fourth
round and
round.
then the
Okay,
fifth
yeah.
round. Yep.
So but 2 picks apart,
Yeah.
Cooks and Cup, and Cup was just absolutely popped off
Yeah.
versus
Well, and
Cooks
I
who could
think,
not play again for a while.
yeah, I think I grabbed Woods. At I think no, actually, you know what? I grabbed Woods after that, and I thought you guys were crazy for not grabbing Woods.
Yeah, Woods, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean he was kind of that safety net last year.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that was what I was really going for in the draft this year, was trying to get the most consistent players possible. And then I drafted Dalvin Cook, so there's that. But
that turned out to be a pretty
it turned
solid
out
first
well,
round
but
pickup.
it didn't really go along with my drafting safe players mentality. So, but yeah, it definitely turned out well. But yeah, so wide receiver number 3 for this week, Kenny Galladay. He's been putting up, up and down weeks as well. Mostly up, but a couple of down weeks. But he had 6 catches for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 1 fumble, so he's back to dominating after Marvin Jones dominated last week.
Yeah.
So
Jones, was it 4 touchdowns from Marvin Jones last
it
week?
was 4, yeah, and that was
Okay.
his second 4-touchdown game in his career.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was right in the middle of I was trying to swing a deal with Neil for Edelman. And,
Oh, yeah.
and
Last
I
week?
think last week. So like this week it finally happened. I think
Right.
it was partially because Murray was going to start again.
Right.
But I think he put in Jones at the last minute into this lineup, so that was a clutch start.
Oh, yeah, he had a big week last week. Yeah. No, and you offered me Murray in the trade for Kittle, and I denied it.
That's true. Yeah,
So that was a mistake.
Because I had offered that before knowing that you had already sent the proposal.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, if you want him, then I'll throw him in.
Yeah, you almost threw him in for free. I could have had him for free. Didn't take him.
That's right. I mean, at that point, I didn't really blame you because thinking back and not thinking he would be putting up 30 points. So.
Yeah, well, that was before his first big game, so.
True. Yeah.
Oh well. But yeah, I have the honorable mention in here. Speaking of that Julian Edelman trade, he was the wide receiver 4 this week, and he had 23.5 fantasy points. So both of those trades worked out for us this weekend. So
it's kind of like we think we know what we're doing at least.
Yeah, we try to. Normally the guys that I trade for put up like 5 points, so it worked out. It worked out this
injured
week.
the next week.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of that, actually, the James Conner injury. Have you heard anything else about?
That? Yeah, so people were concerned it might be like a collarbone injury or whatever, but apparently he came out and just said it might be like an AC sprain, which is some sort of shoulder joint or something. Sprain. So he said that he might play this week, maybe. Okay. But obviously his word is not the official word, so who actually knows? But people were concerned that it might be like some sort of season-ending injury or something, but it looks like he should be okay. At least if he doesn't play this week, then maybe in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was curious.
So
it was garbage time too, so it was kind of
yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? Yeah. But all right, on to the tight end position. We have some unknown tight ends taking up the top 3 spots here. Am I too loud or no? We're good.
Good.
Adjusting.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. We had Ryan Griffin with 22.6 fantasy points. He had 4 catches for 66 yards. He also had 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. So Sam Darnold is using his tight end. All those targets and yards and touchdowns should have gone to Chris Herndon had he played. But Chris Herndon has been sitting out ever since his suspension ended because he's got a hamstring injury.
Did you have him?
I don't think I ever picked him up. I thought, or maybe I did.
There was slight disdain in your voice when I mentioned, or when you said that he would have been getting those targets.
No, so he's been somebody that that I've been thinking about picking up a bunch, but now he's got a lingering hamstring injury, so we don't even know. But he was a lot of people were saying he's going to be a sleeper this year because he's out for the first 5 games for a suspension. So nobody's going to know him in your league, and he might end up being a solid tight end for you for the second half of the season. So
kind of like Ryan Griffin. I didn't know that he was so.
Exactly. So speaking of more tight ends that we've never heard of before this year, Darren Fells had 20.8 fantasy points. He had 6 catches for 58 yards because I put points in again, and 2 touchdowns. And actually, this isn't the first time I've talked about him. He's been being used by Deshaun Watson, so he's definitely got some value. I think he's still sitting on the waiver wire. Maybe that'll change after this week with all the tight end woes that are going. Yeah, Kortze is gonna add him. And then Jonnu Smith was the third tight end with 16.8 fantasy points. He had 6 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown. So he was just filling in for Delanie Walker, an injured Delanie Walker this week, and he had a great game. So
Do you you and Ben and I talked about this a little bit about volume and how that's like kind of the best indicator for
Yeah.
success going forward. Do you see any of these guys continuing to get enough volume to be relevant, or do you see this as just your typical weekly random tight end who kind of breaks out?
Of the three, I would definitely say Darren Fells has the highest. He's been regularly getting like 5 or 6 targets a game. And he's been getting that kind of average 40, 50 yards. I think I picked him up, but then I dropped him once I had Kittle. So,
Oh, okay.
um, I don't know if I did. I might have picked him up. I'm not positive. I could take a look here quick, but yeah, he is someone. Yeah, he's just someone that um yeah, that's had some really solid weeks. Let's take a look. Yeah, the last 4 weeks he had 2 catches for 20 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then he had 6 catches for 69 yards, and then he had 2 catches for 27 yards, and then 6 catches for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those were the last 4 weeks. But
tight end 8. I mean,
yeah, he's been good.
Something.
Yeah. So I picked him up on October 17th, and I dropped him on October 23rd once I had George Kittle. So.
And he's on the waivers.
So. He is available. So all you guys, I'm gonna bid all 30 of my dollars on him. So you guys can have him.
The question is, are we gonna get another 50 bomb dropped on us this year?
I don't know. Well, we have Ryo still has $100 of his fat.
Here, wait, yeah. Let me get out the in honor of Ryo here.
There you go. Got the Cowboys football here.
Yeah, I could get some paraphernalia for there, just
nice.
in his honor. Yeah, Ryo, I think there's some cash that you could be looking to maybe getting Kerryon Johnson's handcuff.
Oh yeah. If you had thrown out $3, would have gotten him. Right. But all right, let's move on to the duds of the week. We gotta streamline this. All right. So, quarterback. Hello. Oh, you need help with a jar. Hang on, I have to help my wife open a jar of jelly.
Just how manly is that? Talking fantasy football podcast. Opening cans of jelly.
Oh yes, I do what I can. All right, so the duds of the week. Number one, for this segment, I usually pick people who we played, not necessarily just the worst players in general, but people that we played that we expected to do well and just did not. So, Jacoby Brissett was a quarterback that, he's been throwing up consistent I think he's had multiple touchdowns in almost every game this year, passing touchdowns. So he's been solid, but this week he only put up 202 passing yards and he had 34 rushing yards and a fumble. But that Denver defense has been looking good the last few weeks. So,
yeah, and you got Fangio from the Bears too. That's kind of heading that, spearheading that defense.
Yeah, and so actually,
it's a tough outing for QB.
Yeah, they had a tough. I mean, the first few weeks, Denver's defense didn't look that good. And then I think they went through like 3 or 4 weeks without even getting a sack. Yeah. And then they finally turned it around. I think it was after the Packers game. They played against the Packers, and they had a tough time. But then after that, they picked it up, and they've been really good recently.
Usually I feel that the bust weeks come from right at the time where someone has enough faith in the player to pick him up off waivers and put him in the lineup, and then you get that nice 8, 9, 10 spot.
That's just how fantasy goes.
Like every time. I mean,
how
it kind of was with Kirk Cousins too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's just how it goes. Yeah. So speaking of which, Kirk Cousins had 11.6 points for you. Like you said, he had 285 yards and 2 rushing yards. And actually, I pointed this out, but he played a great game, to be honest, for what he did. Like he went. I think he threw 25 times. He was 22 for 25 on his passing for 285 yards, and his 3 incompletions were 2 throwaways, so like OB, and then 1 dropped catch by the wide receiver. So like he had no bad passes.
Right. Yeah.
that game. So he had a great game.
Considering where they were a few weeks ago after the Bears game, when the Bears were riding high, and it just tanked since then. But I mean, you had Thielen calling out Cousins, and you had Diggs demanding a trade. And then look where they're at now.
Yeah,
it's
squeaky
5-2,
wheel, huh?
And
yeah.
Yep.
So, all right, in the duds category for running backs, we have Chase Edmonds, who was also on your team. Man, you have guys who are in the studs category and in the duds category, and that was your whole team. Yep. So, yeah, he had
New England defense.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I don't put the defenses in the studs and duds, but New England's always in the stud category.
I've never seen a run.
Yeah, we'll talk about them some more in our matchup, but so Chase Edmonds had just 8 rushing yards and 2 catches for 5 yards. He got hurt, but I don't think it was at the beginning of the game necessarily. But either way, he wasn't having a great game before he got hurt. So
it was early fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was a tough Saints team, and I think they just kind of abandoned the run altogether in that game.
So he wasn't going to get much more.
Right. Yeah. And then Lev Bell only had 5 fantasy points this week. He had 9 rushes for 23 yards and 3 catches for 12 yards. And the Jags D just kind of shut down the run this week. So once again, I think it was just a tough matchup, and Sam Darnold had a tough time getting going this week. So the offense wasn't moving, and the running back wasn't moving. So that's just kind of how it works.
I think Bell wishes he's back in Pittsburgh, or the Steelers are doing that great, but I mean.
Yeah, he'd be doing better. Yeah, that's for sure. And I thought the Jets offense was going to be like an underdog. I thought they were going to be really good this year, or like not really good, but surprisingly good. Because they have. I wasn't as excited about Adam Gase specifically, but I think Sam Darnold is a really good quarterback, and he just hasn't had the opportunity to shine because he hasn't had the tools around him to succeed. And I thought this year he might have that with Lev Bell, and then Robbie Anderson taking another step into the league. I thought maybe he was going to be like surprisingly better than everybody was expecting, but didn't really turn out that way. And then bust number 3 was
matchups against the Dolphins.
Yeah, right. He does. So. He has 2 coming up, I think, still. So unless did they already play once? No, they already. Yeah, they did.
This week in Miami, and then week 14.
That's it. Yeah, right. So they do. They still have 2.
Start of playoffs. So.
Week 1 of playoffs. Yeah, exactly. So Ty Johnson was the bust number 3 for the running back category. He had 4.3 points. He had only 7 rushes for 25 yards and 1 catch for 13 yards. So that was unfortunate. I thought he was definitely going to get more work. And you called it too. You said it was going to be a committee going in, but I really didn't think that Trey Carson was going to be the head of that committee, and it turned out he was.
I don't think anyone really expected that either. Like I was caught off guard when I checked the chat and everyone was pressing F for respects to Riley.
Yeah.
Just because of how unfortunate that was. But I mean,
yeah.
In that situation, it's just it's almost random sometimes.
It's tough.
He could be the workhorse this upcoming week and get 20+ points. So
exactly. Yeah. So in the wide receiver category, Marvin Jones had 4.2 points. Kind of back to what he normally does after his gigantic game. He's always been kind of that boomer bust, depending on if Kenny Galladay's getting all the work or not. And then Kenny Stills, who I thought was going to be a great fill-in for Will Fuller. And I thought he was going to be more consistent than Fuller because he gets those shorter looks and he's not all downfield passes. But, he filled in perfectly for Will Fuller with Will Fuller's usual usage. So...
His 2 catches for 20-some yards.
Yeah, that was it. So, and then the most disappointing in my eyes was Terry McLaurin this week. I thought, they got tore up by the Lions offense last week, so I thought Terry McLaurin might be able to tear up the Vikings, but turns out he couldn't beat Xavier Howard. So, I think it was Xavier Howard, right? Is that Marshawn? Is it Marshawn Lattimore? Marshawn Lattimore. Yeah, that's it. It's definitely Marshawn Lattimore because that's who Marvin Jones scored on twice last week. So,
Well, it doesn't help when Case Keenum's the one throwing you the football either.
it's true. But I mean, he's been solid with Case Keenum, and then Dwayne Haskins came in partway through the game, and he didn't get another look the rest of the game. So,
Right.
but
First option.
yeah. All right, for the tight end position, Jimmy Graham is dead number 1, 3.5 fantasy points with 3 catches and 20 yards. And TJ Hawkinson, I'll throw him in the same group, 1 catch with 21 yards. Both of those guys are basically a touchdown or bust. So, if you play them and they get the touchdown, then you're happy. If you, play them and they don't get the touchdown, you're not happy. So that's just kind of the risk you run. Zach Ertz only had 3 points this week. He had 2 catches for 20 yards. And I mentioned this last week, but he's kind of disappearing this year. Dallas Goedert's been kind of slowly taking over his volume. And I think people were excited about the 2 tight end sets. They thought both tight ends were going to get a bunch of work. And I think that, Zach Ertz has kind of become the lesser of the 2 this year.
And you remember when it was Ertz and
Gronk?
Yeah, I guess it was Ertz and Gronk kind of before the Chiefs really came onto the scene. Yeah, it was mostly Ertz and Gronk. They were 1-2, like away. And those days seem very distant right now.
They do, yeah. Well, Zach Ertz just had a huge. So I was listening to a couple podcasts, and they were saying that Zach Ertz basically only had a huge year in like 2018, like last year, I guess, or 2 years ago, when he had like so many touchdowns. He had like 13 touchdowns. I don't know how many touchdowns he had, but that was when he was putting up like big numbers every week. And basically his yardage apparently is around the same that it was back then. He's just not getting the touchdowns that he used to.
Was it Wentz who was thrown to him at that time as well?
For part of it was Wentz and Foles mostly. Yeah. Because Wentz got hurt 2 consecutive seasons. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess Kelsey and Kittle have kind of replaced them as the big 2. But it's weird to think that was only a couple years ago when Ertz and Gronk were. I mean, they were the guys you would consider taking in like the 2nd or 3rd round in
exactly
just because of how much they stood out. But.
Yeah. But all right, we're gonna move on to the matchup reactions, and we're gonna power through these quickly because we're closing in on an hour here. So
we're already at an hour. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're gonna go through. So the first one is our matchup: Brandon Cooks Kittlecorn versus the Scary Terriers, and you took me down 155.4 to 127.6. And my little one-liner here is Brandon Cooks Kittlecorn hops back on the backs of CMC and the New England special teams to take down the Scary Terriers.
Been riding them all year, so why stop now?
Gosh. And to be honest, those weren't your top scoring players. Mostly it was Mike Evans and Julian Edelman. I guess CMC did have 25.5 points, so that was a fantastic week as well. It's just kind of an average week actually from Christian McCaffrey.
It's crazy to say he's been that consistent, but it's true.
And then did you know there are only 5 players in fantasy football that have more points than the New England defense? 5 players.
5 right now.
Yes.
I texted this to you. Do you think had this been like that they would be historically good, do you think that there would be consideration for taking them in like the top 3 rounds in the draft if there was any inclination that they would be
if I knew that they were going to score these points, I would have taken them in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
They're as good as a running back 1 every week. They got 20 points in almost every week.
I just laughed when I saw I think I was checking the app and like it was the Browns ball at like the 10 or 15 and it was a fumble recovery. And then you get the 2 points for the fumble, and 6 for the touchdown, and then it's
it's better than
another
touchdown
sack
on offense. Yeah. It's insane.
I think
they've had touchdowns in like 3 straight weeks or 4 straight weeks, maybe even more. I don't even know how many straight weeks they've had touchdowns. I feel like it's been every week.
In the 8 games they've played, they've got touchdowns in 4 of them, multiple touchdowns in 2 of those 4.
Jeez.
So six touchdowns total. which is just ridiculous.
Obnoxious.
So they've got
this.
They got your boy Lamar Jackson coming up this week, though, so that it could be the beginning of the end.
See,
that crazy streak.
I think I traded Lamar Jackson at the right time. I got his big 3 games at the beginning of the year, and he has had big games since, but he hasn't been the dominant force that like he's been a very solid fantasy quarterback, but he hasn't been like the new Pat Mahomes, you know. So, but yeah, he's been great. So we'll see. That'll be a good matchup though, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think no, the Packers play the 49ers. I don't think they play the Patriots this year.
That'll be a game to watch. Packers and 49ers.
Yeah, I was looking for like a solid defense to see how the Packers would do. Besides the first game against the Bears, because that was just a shit show. But
game.
Yeah,
oh, gosh,
that was
probably
bad.
the worst game of the year to date for anyone. Fans of the Packers, Bears, or just in general. So.
Yeah. So your duds from this week: Kirk Cousins and Chase Edmonds. We talked about both those guys, both disappointments, but
I thought it was over. Like when Edmonds got hurt, I was like, I'm
screwed
now.
Yeah,
but that's pretty much when Evans just just
started going off.
Just exponentially increase from that point until the end of the game. So it was nuts.
Insane. But so my team, the studs of the Scary Terrys, Dalvin Cook had 25.6 points. He's the running back 1 on the year. I'd say that was a good 3rd round draft price to get him.
Not too bad.
He was actually, he was the 2nd running back that I picked up. I picked up James Conner as my in the 2nd round, and I picked up Dalvin Cook in the 3rd.
I think so many people were just scared of the injuries.
His injury.
And all that. I know that was my thinking. I was like, is it worth the risk? But I mean, even fantasy aside, he's probably the best running back in the game right now.
Yeah. Well, that's also why I picked up Alexander Madison at the beginning of the year too. Like before the season even started, I grabbed him off of waivers just because I knew if Dalvin Cook gets hurt, it's going to be his backfield. So
that's a good point.
And then Cooper Kupp had a big game for me too. So we talked about both of them, and we talked about my duds already, Terry McLaurin and Kenny Stills. So my wide receiver woes continue every single week. I have a wide receiver in the duds category. So
now you got Kupp. I think that will at least solidify it, and then you can kind of fill, and you have Keenan Allen as well. That should it revert to the mean at some point.
Hopefully. Well, here's my thing. I mean, Keenan Allen is playing against the Packers this week, so it's a tough matchup. But so I'm starting him with 100% confidence because I listened to the Fantasy Footballers podcast, and this guy on the Fantasy Footballers, also named Jason, he, in his league of record team, the team he plays against gets the highest score every single week. He's like me last year, where I was the second highest, or I was the highest scorer by far, but like I lost a lot of games. And that's what he's been the second highest scorer every week, and he's been losing to the highest scorer. So he was like, here, I'm gonna post my opponent's lineup this week, and you guys can start all of these people. Basically, was what he said. And Keenan Allen is on his opponent's team this week.
There you go.
So that's why I'm starting him with 100% full confidence. So
yeah, I'd say that with him and Kupp, I think that's a good 1-2 punch.
I hope so. Keenan Allen's got to turn it back around, so we'll see. But all right, on to matchup number 2. Zerline, I never hit you. I did not. Versus Try and Stop Me from Auto Picking. And this was a nail biter.
And
Zerline, I never hit you. Yeah, they pulled it off in the very last play of the game.
Was it a sack? Is that?
Yes. So there was a sack by Pittsburgh's defense to get this final point for Zerline, I never hit you, and take over the victory. So
with the Steelers up by 2 scores.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, he won by the skin of his teeth from a big game from TJ Watt, who had the last sack, and Juju to take down Team Auto Pick. So, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that team auto pick is as much as James likes to go under the radar for like being the auto pick man. He's
Yeah,
active on the waiver
he
wires though.
is, and he gets some
He's
good
good.
pickups.
He's been getting some
Yes,
really nice pickups for
he.
cheap too. So look
Yeah,
out
well,
for
that's the thing.
sneaky James.
He sneaks in the week before, and he grabs people. That's how he does it. He
Yeah, I
does it.
want to.
I'm like, I go like I listen to my podcast, and then I like go and see if the people they're talking about are available, and I see that James picked him up the week before. I'm like, what's going on?
Yep, I think I was looking at Minshew either
Yeah,
for this week or next week,
yeah,
and sure enough, James had
he was
grabbed
gone.
him, started him, and he scored 20-some points for him.
Yeah,
Like, come on.
24 points. Speaking of which,
Oh,
the
it's
studs.
that.
Yeah. And yeah, so Gardner Minshew and Austin Hooper has been a solid force this year, and I was very surprised. He's been really good. And
Tight end one, I think, right now.
he might, yeah, I
Close to
think he is. He's been putting up some, like, all of his points are 15 or over every week, seems to be. So he's been
yeah,
nuts.
tight end one.
Yeah, he's
Did
been
double
crazy.
digits every single week except for week 2.
Yeah,
That's
insane.
kids.
Yeah. And then the duds, he had LaShawn McCoy, who only put up 6.3 points, and T.Y. Hilton, 6.4 points. So, um, I mean, those aren't awful games, but they're not necessarily the best either. So,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of glad to see McCoy busting a little bit just because I had drafted him like in the 13th round, like very late
that's like
in
a
the draft.
flyer.
And
Yeah.
yeah, because he was Bills running back, and I've told you my thoughts about the Bills offense,
Oh,
but
yeah.
and so anyway, as soon as the Bills released him, or maybe even before that, it might have been before the Bills released him, I dropped him to
Yeah.
waivers, and then the Chiefs signed him, and then I mean, snap of a finger, Adam is in there
Oh, yeah.
getting onto the ESPN fantasy app and
Yeah.
picking up McCoy, and I was like, oh gosh darn it. So
Yeah.
I mean, he still got upside, of course,
Right.
but
Yeah. But all right. So team two, Mix and Mac. The studs for Mix and Mac. Just Julio Jones.
Julio Jones,
Just Julio Jones. Orange Julius Jones.
orange. Same.
Yeah, he had 20.2 fantasy points. And it's good to see him kind of get back up on his horse here. Wait, is that right? No, this is not Mix and Max. See, it's Zerline. I never hit you. I have the wrong name in here.
Okay.
That's what it is. I was like, I
oh,
know
dang,
Benaya has him.
Neil's got Julio Jones too. I was like, dang.
Yeah. Nope, I was wrong. Not Mix and Mac. It's Zerline. I never hit you. I did not.
That's great.
Yeah, so we had Julio Jones put up 20 points, and it's been good because he had a rough couple of games, but he bounced back here. And then the duds category, Derrick Henry and Sony Michel. Just not as Sony Michel had 74 rushing yards, so it was a pretty good game, but he's just not getting the touchdown. When he doesn't get the touchdown, he's just kind of a bust. So
It's amazing what one touchdown for running how dramatic different week if they do get one score and they have like 15 plus points, or if they don't and they got 8 or 9, and you look at them, it's like
exactly.
Like how big a swing just like one extra goal line touch can get you.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, matchup number 3. My tight end hurts when I fart, and Rogers Cup. So, Aaron's team. Yeah, right. Yeah, he doesn't have Cup anymore. Well, you don't have Kittle anymore. Yeah, I know.
Touche.
So my tight end hurts when I fart pulled it out against what I think is a very good Rogers Cup team. They won 108.1 to 96.8. My tight end hurts when I farts average scoring team was able to ride on Deshaun Watson's big game to victory over Rogers Cup. So do I still got you here? You're kind of in and out.
Oh yeah, I think I can still hear you.
Okay,
clear.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, so he had Aaron Rodgers and Saquon Barkley putting up big games. This is Rogers Cup, and Jimmy Graham and Carolina's defense kind of put up some duds for him this week.
I'm kind of glad to see Barkley popping off for him a little bit. Because man, he was the consensus first overall pick in the draft going all around, and I remember I either wanted the first pick or the third pick because I couldn't pick between McCaffrey or Kamara. I was like, it's a coin
Yeah.
toss. I thought it's a coin toss.
Right.
And then I knew that I would take Barkley if I had the number one. And
Oh, for sure.
So I just lucked out that it happened to be McCaffrey that I grabbed instead of Kamara. But I mean, it was too bad to see Barkley go down with injury.
Yeah.
Few weeks of the season, I think.
Yeah, it was kind of some bad luck for anybody who drafted him because, it's your first round. Nobody wants to lose their first round pick, so that's some huge value off your team.
Especially when you don't get your next pick until the end of the second round.
Yeah, exactly. That's the trade-off. Yeah.
You and I talked a little bit about like draft strategies, and you would rather draft the beginning of the first or the end of the first or in the middle, and that's you better get max value out of that first pick.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for team, my tight end Ertz when I fart is I always want to say like I fart, but also I fart because that's a joke.
It took you so long to figure out.
It's when I first saw it.
That's great.
I know when I first saw it, I just didn't get it. I was like, my tight end Ertz when I fart, like. Because you're putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable, right?
Exactly. So that's exactly how I read it too. So
yeah,
props to him.
Exactly. So in the studs category, Deshaun Watson, and that was basically the only big game from my tight end Ertz. Now in the duds category, he had DJ Moore, who had 6.3 points, and everybody else was in between 8 and 12. So nothing too big. I don't know off the top of my head. That's just kind of what I have in here. It was just kind of an average day from everyone else. But matchup number 4, Big Ben's Bathroom versus the Running Mayfields. Big Ben's Bathroom put up 147 fantasy points to Running Mayfield's 92.6. So that was also a big game. He had a lot of those studs on his team. Aaron Jones, Kenny Galladay, and Michael Thomas all had big games for Big Ben's Bathroom. He's got
putting up scores that a 7-6-1. I think he's 6-1.
Yeah.
6-1 team should be producing. So that's.
I guess it's 7-1 now, right? 8 weeks. So.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yep.
7-1. Wow.
Yeah, it's been insane. Like, he is a good team, and now I was looking at his team, and I was trying to get a trade, like trying to think of a trade. But he doesn't need anything from me. So
I'm looking at his roster right now. Can you imagine if Le'Veon Bell starts to?
I know. That's who I was gonna try to buy low on Lev Bell, but he doesn't need anybody else. So I was like, I can't trade him anything because I don't have anything to offer him.
I will say that his DJ Chark pickup was probably one of the better waiver wires pickup so far. I mean,
for sure.
He's a wide receiver 4 right now.
Yeah, he's been very consistent.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. But yeah, so speaking of Lev Bell, he only had 5 points, and then Zach Ertz also kind of put up a dud for him this week. And then the running Mayfields, the lone bright spot was Matt Stafford with 23.4 points. That's a good pickup because I went to go pick him up this week, and he was already gone. And said I grabbed Josh Allen, but Matt Stafford was going to be my filler for when Kyler Murray was doing bad here. So
yeah, he'll be. I feel like he'll be pretty solid going forward. I mean, you kind of talked about it on your last podcast too. He's a indoors quarterback. So
yeah,
I mean, if you can get those going into December and
January,
that's
big.
That's really good.
Oh yeah, and then the duds for him, he had T.J. Hawkinson and OBJ. OBJ has been just I think the biggest letdown of this. Well, I don't know actually. Joe Mixon's up there.
Mixon's up there.
Yeah. But
all the soft spot for Mixon.
I know. No, I do too, man. Mixon's always been a good player, so seeing him struggle this year has been rough.
Yeah, I mean the line just kind of reminds you of the Texans a little bit. It's just, got as much talent as you could hope for behind the line. Well, except for whoever the Bengals are rolling out at QB, but
exactly.
As far as it goes, then just no space to run.
Yeah. All right, on to matchup number 5, Mix and Mac versus Carry On My Wayward Son.
I better keep that name. I don't know what podcast would be without the little blurb.
Exactly. Latavius Murray carries Mix and Mac to victory over Carry On My Wayward Son. He had 102.3 fantasy points to Carry On's 87.5. So the studs for Mix and Mac. He had Latavius Murray putting up his big game, 32.2 points, recently acquired from Kortze here.
Okay.
And then Marvin Jones put up the dud game for him, 4.2 points. He also had Gerald Everett, who had 2.5 fantasy points, which is kind of a surprise. Gerald Everett, I thought he was going to have a little bit better game in the wake of taking over Woods's and Cooks's roles, seems like.
Getting all their targets.
Exactly. And then he had the dud at quarterback with Jacoby Brissett. But
I felt a little bad for Neil that the week that he put Mixon on the bench, I think he did get a receiving touchdown, and I think he put up like 14, 15 points.
Yeah.
And I traded him Lindsey, who he put in his flex, and I think he got like 10 or 11 points.
Yeah.
For sure. So, I mean, it wasn't that egregious, but it's
right.
like, of course, the week that you don't start the guy that's been slacking all year, that's when he gets that score.
That's how it happens. For every player that you put in as a start of confidence after their big games, there's that player that you put on the bench after their awful games, and they just do great. So
every time.
It's exactly
fancy.
Yep. And for Carry On, the studs, the only one I could come up with was the kicker, Josh Lambo, who put up 12 fantasy points. Everybody else just kind of had a mediocre game. Ty Johnson, I feel bad about this one. He had 4.3 fantasy points, but
what can you do?
Yeah.
You sent the offer and he pushed the button. So
You're right. So
that's all you can do.
All right, this is like my favorite segment of the podcast. So this is the waiver wire team that could beat all of us. I love this. Every single week I love finding all of these waiver wire players who why didn't you just grab all of these people and play them this week? They could have won.
Perfect.
So the quarterback of this team, Daniel Jones with 28.2 points. The running back won. So this is where it got thin because there weren't too many running backs who actually scored really well this week, besides who was already on a team.
Yeah.
Raheem Mostert had 12 fantasy points, and Brian Hill, who is the third string running back for the Atlanta Falcons, snuck into the end zone and got himself 8.9 fantasy points.
Who's got Devontae Freeman? I'm sure they're thrilled to see Brian Hill getting in the end zone these days.
I think it's the running Mayfields.
Okay.
Brandon Metzler. So the wide receiver one for this team would be Chris Conley, another Jaguars wide receiver who had a good game. And he had 18.3 points. And Darius Slayton for the Lions had 18 fantasy points. Right? Is that the Lions? I think so.
Gosh, I honestly don't know.
I think it is.
Really quick.
I might be wrong.
Slayton. He is... Giants.
Giants, that's it. Yeah, I knew it was blue. Yeah.
Get those Lions receivers if that's the case. Dang.
Exactly.
Still.
So the tight end for this team would be Ryan Griffin, 22.6 fantasy points. And the flex is also a tight end, Darren Fells, with 20.8 points because they scored more than all the rest of the wide receivers and running backs this week on the waiver wire. And then the Jaguars D put up 17 points and Dan Bailey put up 16 points. And that would have totaled you 161.8 points and would have beat us all. So
who does anyone have the Jaguars? Because I'd be kind of disappointed if someone didn't start them against the Jets.
Nobody has them right now because they were on the waivers after this week. So maybe somebody might pick them up this week. But yeah, these are all on waivers currently.
Okay.
Yep. So, all right. So this is my top 5 favorite segments on my podcast.
Nice.
I think I have less than 5 segments, but so this is my matchup predictions for next week. So last week I was 2 for 5, which is not that great. I think the previous week I was 3 for 5, so I'm losing it a little bit. I went into it and actually I counted this out originally on Monday before the game was over, and I had Benaya winning, and at that point he was losing and it didn't look like he was going to win. So Yeah,
The
and
second
he
can.
pulled it out at the very end of the game. So I had it as 1 for 5 in my first draft of this, and I was like, oh man, like no
Dang.
good. 1 for 5, yeah.
Yeah,
But
you knew that was coming. You
exactly.
saw it coming from a
Yeah,
mile
yeah,
away.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
it's
The
good.
other three I also saw coming from a mile away, but I didn't get them right. All right,
So
matchup number 1 for next week: the Scary Terries versus Carry On
carry on
My
my
Wayward
wayward son.
Son.
It's coming.
Exactly. And the projected winner, I always pick myself. So Scary Terry's is going to win this game. Even though Cooper Kupp is on a bye, I think my running backs will pull through for the victory. All right, matchup number 2. Oh wait, no. I'm going to ask you, who do you think is going to win? Honestly.
I'm just gonna
Yeah, you go
see if
through
I can
these
pull
two.
up the matchup here. So we've got um let's see, there you are. Okay. So we've got Wentz against Allen, got Jacobs against Cook, Johnson against Carson. I
My
mean,
defense is currently on a bye, so I don't have points on my defense right now.
okay. I mean, I think having Cook and Carson at running back, I mean, that's a great start there. The Eagles are going against the Bears, so Wentz is probably not a strong start there.
Yeah,
And then Hopkins has just been underperforming all year, so
yeah.
that's tough.
And Jacksonville's a tough matchup too.
All right. I honestly I do like John Brown going forward. I think that
Oh
will
yeah.
get right with some wins. So
Hey,
that's as
it's
good of a flex as you can
it's
have
the
there.
revenge game for John Brown. He's got to prove that he was worth that Cooper Kupp trade.
I say Cup's got the bye and Brown's starting. So I
You know
mean,
what? I think he did this on purpose. He gave them to me knowing that Kupp was going to be on bye when I played him.
he might have just fooled us all on that one.
Yeah.
We're giving him a
Yeah.
hard time, and he's
Yeah.
like,
He's
I
playing the
know
long
what I'm
game.
doing, guys. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly.
So who do you think has the win? You think?
I think, yeah, I think with what you got at running back and now having your tight end spot solidified, I think you'll have enough to pull through on this one.
All
I
right.
mean, your projection's already ahead of him, and you don't have any defense in there right now. Well, you have New Orleans, but they're on the bye, so
Right.
you're throwing it up 7-8 points, and as far
There
as
you
the
go.
numbers go, it looks like you should be in pretty good shape.
All right. So that's 2 for 2 on the Scary Terries next week. We'll see if it happens. All right, matchup number 2. Try and stop me from auto picking versus Brandon Cook's Kittlecorn,
Doesn't
and
have Kittle.
who does not have Kittle anymore. My projected winner is Brandon Cook's Kittlecorn. Nobody can stop him, and he's been building up his team. And I was looking at your team today, and I was like, how did this happen? Then I was like, I helped this happen. Unfortunately.
I can say Edelman, and honestly, I didn't really foresee Connor happening.
Yeah.
I kind of thought about it. I think maybe once when we were first discussing the trade, because at that point I was really looking for a wide receiver too, which Edelman at this point now fills.
Yeah.
So as long as Hunter Henry, I think, can just keep being consistent, then I think we should be in good shape. And but what I'm actually most concerned about is my quarterback spot. I think just with the Falcons being, are they 1-7 right now?
Yeah.
Something like that. And I don't know how much they'll play Matt Ryan going forward.
Yeah, they might sit him.
So
yeah.
I mean, if Kirk Cousins is my starter going forward, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. But
no, he's been pretty solid, but yeah, but I think you got this one in the bag because Austin Hooper's on a bye.
Saw that too. That's a good point.
So yeah. I don't think he's going to fill in that tight end spot, and he's been getting him a solid 15 points or more most weeks. So
yeah, just crazy numbers. Even with who started for them? Was it who did start for the Falcons this last weekend? I can't remember.
For the quarterback?
Yeah, instead of
Matt Schaub.
That's right. Okay, I kept thinking Matt Moore. I was like, no, that's Chiefs.
No, yeah.
Schaub, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, so he is. Yeah. He's a matchup proof.
So I'm assuming
is the only matchup that can stop him.
Exactly. So I'm assuming you're picking you to win this matchup.
See, I don't want to jinx it, but I mean, I'm just feeling. My prediction is the Patriots will come through with another 30 spot this week, and then that's all. That's
there
all
you go.
That's all I can worry about.
Yeah,
so.
I mean they are against Baltimore, so it's a slightly tougher matchup this week. It's not as easy as it previously was.
True. The sack numbers, I don't think we'll be there this time.
Yeah. All right, matchup number 3. Zerline, I never hit you, I did not. Versus my tight end hurts when I fart. God, both of those names. My
You got
projected
some good
winner.
names.
There are some good names. My projected winner is Zerline, I never hit you. I think Russell Wilson is going to bounce back here this week against Tampa Bay, an awful Tampa Bay defense. And they're going to take down my tight end Ertz when I furt because Gurley's on a bye, Calvin Ridley's on a bye. It's a tough week for my tight end Ertz right now.
And Chubb's got a tough matchup against the Broncos.
Yeah,
Well,
that's going to be rough.
Kelsey's going against the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's got this one in the bag.
Moore's got the Titans, which are
and actually, the Green Bay's been bad against the run, so Melvin Gordon might not be a bad play.
Yeah, I was just say if I think Benai's in a good spot here if Melvin Gordon kind of starts coming back a bit. And
yeah, I think so too. Well, he got value for him in the 5th round. Right. And you listened to last week's, right? He didn't even know that Melvin Gordon was hurt or holding out. I guess not hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Well, I think Eckler went shortly after Gordon. I think.
Yeah, it was really close. So yeah,
that was obviously. I mean, still is a good pickup because he's getting
he's
a lot
still
of
getting work.
Yeah.
All right, so who do you got in this one?
Oh man, see it. Gotta add some controversy to this or something.
It's tough to add controversy in this matchup.
Yeah, I would like to give tight end Ertz when I fart a bit more love. It's just he's got. I mean, the players are there. It's just not a good matchup for a lot of them, especially with the guys on bye. So I think I'll have to go with Zerline.
Unless Russell Wilson always throws to Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, that's true.
Which could happen.
That situation, that's kind of what we gotta hope for.
So, all right, matchup number 4: Mixon Mack versus the running Mayfields. My projected winner is Mixon Mack. I think the return of Devontae Adams. I think Devontae Adams is going to return this week. I have no basis on that claim. I have no facts, but I just think it's going to happen. And he's going to help Mixon Mack take down the running Mayfields this week.
Okay, I think I'm leaning a bit towards the running Mayfields.
Yeah.
You've got
actually that's probably
Diggs,
right.
Stephon Diggs with the matchup against the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Both teams are a little bit lacking at tight end. It looks like this week with Everett and on a bye and Hockenson.
Yeah.
But with Stafford also kind of at the peak of his game right now, and I think this is it. I feel like it'll be a blowout one way or another, where like all the players like for one team perform and the other don't. It kind of seems like it could be that kind of matchup.
So we're not seeing Mixon Mack's full team because he's got some players on the bench from last week that were on a bye. So like Lamar Jackson is on the bench, but he is playing New England, so that's going to be a tough matchup. But then Devontae Adams, who I think is going to play, is also on his bench. So
that'll hopefully kind of, well, gosh, at that point he'll have Godwin, Adams. Yeah, that's about as good of a 1-2 receiver as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get maybe if I were him, I'd probably put Marvin Jones in the flex. Well, I guess he's got there, and just hopes he gets like another 20.
He's got a lot of guys on a bye this week.
Yeah, just looking at that too.
He's got like 5 or 6 guys on a bye. Yeah.
But I think this one will be interesting to see play out. I could see it going either way, but I'll put my pick in for the running Mayfields.
All right, there you go. There's the first discrepancy of the day.
There we go. We got one.
All right, matchup number 5: Big Ben's bathroom versus Rogers Cup. And I have Rogers Cup winning this one because his monster team is going to make a comeback and give Big Ben's bathroom his second loss.
Ooh, okay. Adam was trying to sell me on Dorsett last week. We were kind of discussing. I was trying to get Allen Robinson a little behind the scenes, and I was trying to get Allen Robinson, and I was offering. I think I offered Lindsey and Murray, kind of a similar deal as to what I offered Neil for Edelman. Not quite as much, I don't think. But regardless, it'll be interesting to see what Sanu does with the Patriots and if that eats into Dorsett's targets or vice versa.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as this matchup goes,
That's a
I
tough
mean, you've
one.
got
Actually,
it depends on who.
yeah. Big Ben's Bathrooms, they have a lot of good matchups.
Though when you got the Saints on bye, that's Breeze and Thomas not
Yeah.
in your lineup.
It's true, but they have Amari Cooper against the Giants, Kenny Galladay against Oakland, uh, Aaron Jones against the Chargers, who have had a rough time against running backs, and Lev Bell against Miami.
I was looking at that too. It looks like
And
that's
DJ Chark versus Houston, and Houston has given up big numbers in the passing game too. That's tough.
That's a good. You've pitched it well
I know.
for Ben's Bathroom.
Well, it's bad.
So,
I picked Rogers Cup, so.
it's right. It's right. Because of that, I think you've convinced me that I'm gonna pick old Chadwick here and go with.
All right. There you go. I think I mainly picked Adam because I didn't want Chad to win again. So.
See, but if we both picked Adam, we'd have jinxed Adam. And
you're right. Yeah, so it's got to be both. Yeah, we got to even each other out. So,
exactly.
All right, we have a surprise segment for you because you don't know what's on here.
Okay.
But yeah, I have some questions.
Perfect.
So some questions were sent in. This is our Q&A section. I have 2 questions. This one's for the both of us from Adam. And he says, "Hi, Jason and Kortze." Actually, he said guest, but I put in your name. If you were to choose to be one of the NFL's team mascot for Halloween to scare people with, who would it be and why?
Gosh, I didn't even know NFL mascots that well.
I know. I didn't even think about this answer before now.
So it's a good question.
It is.
Honestly, I've only been to 2 NFL games, and they're both Cowboys games here.
Well, just take like the logos, I guess, and yeah, and you can kind of do what you will with the.
So scaring someone on Halloween with the.
I mean, the mascots are meant to be friendly. They're supposed to be like kind of intimidating, but like not in a scary way, you know?
Yeah. True, exactly. Huh. What do you have a surefire go-to in this?
No,
case?
that's what I saw the question, but I didn't even think about the answer until I got here. So,
well, around this area,
being a Bears fan would be scary to me.
Yes. Yes. I was listening to 670 The Score the other day, and they were talking about Chicago sports teams in general right now.
Yeah.
And the best offense in the city of Chicago right now is the Bulls.
Yeah.
How sad is that? That the Cubs were atrocious this last year, especially going down the stretch. The Sox are probably a close second to the Bulls.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The Blackhawks haven't been good either.
Hawks suck.
Yeah.
Sort of atrocious. So yeah, that's.
What about the Fire? How are the Fire doing?
The Fire? That's a good question. How often do the Fire get a shout out on a fantasy podcast?
You're right. Not too frequently. All right, I think I have an answer to this.
Okay. Yeah.
If I were able to make a realistic Vikings mascot, if I were a legitimate, like realistic Viking, I think I could scare some people like that.
I could, yeah, that would be with the horns and all that, yeah. I'm honestly like looking at different pictures of mascots. Okay, so this guy, NFL Sir Saint, apparently. This guy,
Saint guy.
I don't know if you can see him.
Oh,
yeah,
jeez,
that
big
guy.
face. Look at that face.
He reminds me of the. Is it a guy from Ratatouille or is it Gru from? No, it's not Gru.
No, it's probably the guy from Ratatouille.
He's a guy from Ratatouille who's I'm thinking of. But
that's a good one.
Sir Saint. That's my.
Yeah. Although, did you see this last week? The Jaguar came flying in from the top of the stadium with a ghost costume on. They were playing the Jets.
Okay.
And they were playing Sam Darnold highlights on the big screen while the Jaguar was coming in, because Sam Darnold last week said he was seeing ghosts. So the Jaguars mascot was wearing a ghost costume, and they're.
I wish there was more of that.
they were
NFL,
trolling
like,
the fuck out of Sam Darnold.
more trolling, I think, the better, just because
Yeah.
like that just I don't know, like everyone's just too like you see guys shaking hands after the game and being all buddy buddy, and it's like
Yeah.
we need more Vontae's perfect Antonio Brown type
Right.
relationships in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
So,
All right. So we had some good answers to that one. The other question is just for you, and actually.
okay.
No, yeah, never mind. All right, Courts, have you read any good books lately? Not fantasy related or football related in the least, but
Trying to
have
remember
you
the
read any good
last
books?
the last book I read
So the answer is no.
for
Lately,
recreation.
I have not read any books
That
lately.
is a no. I can't remember the last time I read a book, not out of necessity.
Then,
I probably read something. Yeah, I read a Python book for work.
yeah.
But
Then give me a good book recommendation in general. Or give Benaya a good book recommendation in general.
I had a good book recommendation. Oh my gosh. So there was this half price book sale that Megan and I went to a couple weekends ago, and there was like this big warehouse. It looked like kind of like a flea market.
Dude, half
They
price
just had-
books is where it's at.
I said I had never heard of it until coming to Dallas, and then Megan was like, "Oh, you've got a half price bookstore like right next to your apartment. Like we gotta
Yeah.
go there." I was like, it's
Okay.
books, so I'm not gonna
Yeah.
do anything there. But like they've got other stuff. They don't have like they've got DVDs and games and
Yeah.
other random
Yep.
stuff. So it's great. So we were
They
there the other
They had
day.
instruments at the one near my house.
Really?
Yeah.
No kidding. Like
Yeah.
like
At the half price
saxophone,
books.
trombone, those kind of instruments.
Like guitars.
Dang.
Yeah.
Oh, guitars. Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. Where's the one closest to you?
Well,
in
it actually closed down, but there was one right down 59 from my house, like a couple miles down.
Gotcha. No, that's too bad. Well, there is one here. So, and that just made me think there was a book that I saw there that I think I do have somewhere. Which I don't know why I even bought books, because like the chances of me actually and in this case it was a book of baseball stadiums over like the past 150 years. I don't know, something like that.
There you go.
But it was like this big old picture book. And
Yeah.
so my answer, Benai, is any books with pictures. Like you got those
There
great
you go.
illustrated classics books. Like that's as good as it gets right there.
There you
Just
go.
Get ones with pictures.
Do you have the name of that stadium book?
Actually, I might.
I think that sounds like
it's
something.
in a box here.
That sounds like
I
something that
can send it
Benaya
to
would
you.
be interested in.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm sure it's got. I didn't look through the whole thing, but I'm sure it's got a beauteous picture of PNC Park, probably.
Oh, I'm sure.
Featured somewhere in that, because that's one of the best looking stadiums in.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look that up. I'll send the name to you after.
There you go. Sounds good. All right. Well, that does it for the episode. So good luck this week to you, Showbags. Thanks a lot, Andrew, for being on the podcast. It was great to have you, and I look forward to maybe having you on again sometime. So
sounds good. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for what you're doing with the podcast. It's a blast listening to. Takes you away from work a little bit during
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Good stuff.
A lot of fun.
Thanks again.
Yeah. All right. Good luck, you Showbags. Goodbye.